Hi everyone, Savannah here, and today's sketch is something special, Life of a Showgirl inspired by Taylor Swift's newest album. We're combining glitz, glamour, and even her cats in fun feathered headpieces. I'll be using my free Procreate brush set, which you can grab in the link below, as well as the color palette and the template. Let's go ahead and jump right in. Now, normally I do the background first, but for this, because the background I've chosen is going to be very dark, and that's going to make the outline very hard to see, I'm going to start with the cat. So I created a new layer, I brought it below the outline layer, and we're going to start on this middle cat. Now, admittedly, I am not a Swiftie. I do enjoy her music, and so I had to Google and see what her cats look like. I knew she had cats. I just didn't know the exact coloring or the type of cats that she had, so I had to Google them. So this cat, I believe, is Benjamin. So we're going to work on him first. Now, because I'm not a Swiftie, if you're following along and you are a Swiftie, leave a comment below. Let me know how I did on the likeness of these cats. I think they might have looked a little bit chubbier than what her cats usually look like, but I had a lot of fun doing this. This was an idea that came into my head when I heard that she was doing the Showgirl album, and I just thought it'd be kind of a fun take on incorporating her most loved things in life with one of her new releases. And so that's kind of where I went with this direction. But like I said, I'm not the biggest Swiftie, so I did have to look this up. So hopefully I did her cats justice. Now I did grab this grayish color to start with the cats. Now I know they're much lighter than the white cats in a lot of the areas on their fur, but I wanted to start with this gray because I wanted to have that as the shadow behind the white fur. And then I'm grabbing a lighter color in that color palette to go over top to create that lighter fur. And I'll pull in some white too, but we're just lightening it up now. So just be mindful of around the paws here of the cat. I am trying to leave a little bit of darkness around the edges so that you can see that those are legs. If you do the whole thing over with the white, then it'll kind of blur in. So just make sure you kind of leave a little bit of that there. I will build it up a little bit as well, so don't worry if you cover it up completely. We'll build up that section again here in a second, but for now I'm just adding in this white fur all over. I've done this technique in other videos, so I won't go too in depth of how I'm doing it, but basically I'm just doing these short brush strokes here on the fur with that circle blend brush. So the base layer I use the circle brush. For fur, I use that circle blend brush because it is pressure sensitive, so I can really easily adapt how much of this color I'm putting on top versus how much I still want that lower layer to show through, and it does blend it really nicely. It does make it look a lot like fur or hair, and so that's what I'm using to create this fur for this middle cat here, and I'll do that on the other cats as well. And I do turn the outline layer off as I'm building up this hair because I want to make sure it's looking how it should look, that there's, distinction there. Like the legs here, there's not as much distinction. So I'm grabbing that dark, almost black color and going to go in and add that into the middle of the legs here. I'm going to add a little bit of that separation between the toes and then a little bit around the edges as well because I want that distinction that there are paws here. There is going to be a shadow behind, where those paws are standing. So that's why I'm adding in with that dark color. And then going back over it with the gray just to smoothen it out, blend it in a little bit more because it's very stark, very dark. I don't want it to be that dark. I just want the impression that there are legs here without drawing the eye to that area because it's so dark. So I'm just lightening it up, making those lines a little bit smaller here with that gray color, and you can use the white too if you want. I'll go in here in some spots to lighten up with this white color just to give it more of that brightness because then it's looking a little too gray. Her cats aren't necessarily gray, there are a lot of white in their fur, and so I wanted to make sure that this was lightened. And now we're going to add some of the features around the eyes here. So I'm grabbing this dark grayish brown black color and I'm going to add the fur around the eyes. Now this cat has really striking blue eyes, which we'll add. They have dark ears and then they have this kind of dark brown kind of patchiness around their eyes, which is really cool and makes their eyes really strike with that blue. And so I'm just adding that in here. Still using that circle blend brush, you see here how I'm adding it in. It looks like hair or fur. I am going to increase the size here. So a lot of this, if you want to increase the size, you still get that hair texture. It does look a little bit more blurred out. So if you want finer details, just make that brush smaller. But I don't mind the larger size. I think it still looks good. It still gives that impression of hair or fur. And so I'm going to keep it at the size because it also takes much less time to do the hairs when you have it at a larger size. So I'm going to keep it at the size. And then as I'm blending in this black and brown, I'm just dragging the brush across both those colors, and you can play around. This is one of my custom brushes that I have in that brush set, which again you can find down below in the link there, but you can kind of glide over those two colors and it will blend them in together and pull those colors back and forth, which I really like. That's kind of why I built this brush, because I like that you're able to do that. And then I'm just turning the outline layer off again just to see how the fur is looking, if there's anything I want to tweak. And then I actually merged it down. And the reason I merged it down is now I want to blend it in with the gray. So I'm grabbing the gray color and I'm just very lightly with the softest touch blending that in with the hair that we had for the main body, because I want it to look natural. Red with the way it was right there, it looked like it was just resting on top, and I want it to blend in a little bit more nicely. So that's why I'm kind of doing that here. I'm just blending it in. And I chose gray because I just wanted to have a little bit more contrast. I didn't want to just do bright white and make it whiter or lighter. In this area, I still want it to be a little bit dark. Now we are going to add in the pink nose and mouth. We're doing this on a new layer using that circle brush. And we have that pink color in that color palette. So I'm just going to add that in here, and I'm turning the opacity layer down on the outline layer because it's easier to see. You can also just turn off the outline layer if you want to just adapt your lines how you want to adapt them, but sometimes it's nicer to turn the opacity down like I'm doing here and add in that color. And now with that done, let's go ahead and work on the eyes. I'm grabbing this dark cyan blue color and I'm just going to trace the outline here of the eyes. Now, when you trace it, you just follow the shape there and just hold your pen down. My hand is kind of blocking the way, but you just drag it across the shape there, hold your pen down, and it'll snap it to a nicer curve. So that's what I did here. And then I just went over it one more time because I'm going to make this the edge of the eye with this dark blue color. And then I'm going to do a new layer below this and color in and fill in the actual inner part of the eye here. So again, to make these lines more smooth, more curved, you just drag along that curve the best you can, hold it there for a second, and then it will snap it into a nice curve if you can't draw curves that easily, which I sometimes can, sometimes I can't, but it's nice to have that option in Procreate. But if you want to go and be a little bit more like traditional, um, traditional art, if you don't want to try and use the technology in Procreate, then you can just follow the outline and just, make it as best as you possibly can. But it's nice also to have that feature if you want to use that. And actually, one thing I do before I fill in the eye color is I'm actually going to duplicate this layer and drag it onto the other cat. So this will make it go much faster with the process here. And I'll actually do that with the headdress as well on the cat. So I'll do it on one of the cats and then copy paste it and move it over to the other one. So that's what I'm doing here with the shape. So I don't have to trace all the noses and all the eyes. I still need to fill in the eyes with the colors for the cats, but I don't have to trace those sections anymore because I've just done that. So to duplicate, you just swipe left on the layer, duplicate, and then you can move it around and change the shape. Now I'm going to grab this lighter blue color for the inside of this cat's eye. They have really bright blue eyes, and so I'm starting with this lighter color, and then I'll grab in a darker blue more towards the center here, and then I'll add a little kind of white spot for the like the reflection or the glare from the glossiness of that eye. And so that's what I'm going to do here is just add in that lighter blue, grab that darker blue, and then we'll add in a little bit white for that reflection. Now with these other cats, I wasn't quite sure what color their eyes were. I tried to look at the pictures and some of them are hard to see. So I'm sorry if I went complete off base with this, but if you want to be more accurate to what the color of her cat's eyes are, you can definitely change those. Please don't copy what I'm doing here if I did them completely wrong. But we're going to fill in the main color here on both these eyes. And then the same thing is what we're going to do with that blue eye that I talked about is we're going to add a darker color for the inner part there and then add a little bit of that lighter white glossiness to the surface of the eye. Now with those filled in, I'm going to set this layer to alpha lock. And what that essentially is going to do or allow us to do is when we grab in these colors and add the darker shades on the inside, it's going to keep it within that shape. So you'll see what I mean here in a second. I'm adding in this dark blue color here on the inside and it's not going outside the lines. So that's perfect. That's exactly what I want. And I'm going to do that on the other eyes as well with a slightly darker color here just to give it more definition and more interest to their eyes. And I did use the circle blend brush here because I wanted to blend this color out a little bit. When I do the center pupils of the eye, I am going to do those in a circle brush and I'm going to make them more distinct. But for this art, I wanted them to blend in towards each other. Now for this inner part, I did grab the wrong color here. I'm actually going to use that dark cyan blue color, but I'm going to do the inner part here of the eye. And then with the other one, I'm going to do a darker reddish brown color because they're more brown based coloring. I want it to blend a little bit nicer or match a little bit nicer. So for this pupil, I'm doing this dark blue color because it goes very nicely with the blue eyes. And then, like I said, the other one, I'm going to do like a dark red color for the inner parts of their eyes. And then I did make the pupils a little bit bigger because I like that look. It looks a little bit more cutesy, kind of like the Puss in Boot eyes. And so that's the direction I want to go. But you don't have to make them quite as large if you don't want to. And now one thing that I did change here, so when I did the eyes, the outline of the eyes, I used that dark blue color. It doesn't look great with these brown eyes. So I just set that outline layer to alpha lock and grabbed that brown, that same color that we used for the inner part of the eye here. I just set that color in around the edges. So it looked a little bit better. I didn't like the blue against it because it just looked unnatural. So that's what I did here. Now grab that gray color and let's just add the little white reflectiveness to the eyes here. So that's what I'm going to do there on the eyes. And then we can move on to one of the other cats. Now let's create a new layer right above the layer that we did for Benjamin. And we're going to grab that gray color again and we're going to add in the cat to the right here. So the cat to the right here, I believe this one is modeled after Meredith, which is one of her other cats that she has. She has three total. So the middle one is Benjamin. The one on the right is Meredith. And then we have the one on the left, which is Olivia. So This one, we're going to, again, just trace it with that gray color. Don't worry about it being too dark. We're going to do the same technique that we did for Benjamin, where we lighten it up with that white color. And then there's also going to be feathers here in front of both the cats here on the left and the right. And so don't worry about being too perfect in the corners there because it will be covered by feathers. But for now, we're just going to trace and fill this in. And then again, we're going to add that fur or hair-like texture to both of them with that white color. And one thing I think for these two cats here, I think their ears actually do fold over in real life, but I wanted them to stand up because I thought it looked a little bit better with the headdress. So again, these aren't going to be exact replicas, of course, by any means of her cats. And I'm also not a Swiftie, so I don't fully know all the details of her cats like most people probably do who follow and listen to her. But this is just, again, going off of what I was able to find online of the cats and just going off of the vision that I had for this. So I just want to keep it fun, whimsical, have some tie in to her personal life with her career. And so that's where I kind of went with this. It's just a fun thing to do, just putting these cats in showgirl costumes. Now, before we set the layer to alpha lock and add in the details, I'm just going to go around the edge with that circle blend brush and just bring out the hair a little bit. And this will give it that hair-like texture around the edges so it's not just a straight line. So I'm just going to do that on both these cats here, and then we'll start adding in details. And then again, just turn that outline layer off as you're working through this piece so that you can see how the edges are looking. It's really helpful here too with the fur so I can see, is it looking like fur or do I need to tweak it, add more, or take away some areas? So it's really helpful to turn that outline layer off for that. Okay, now we have the basic shape for the two cats here. Let's set that to alpha lock. And then I'm going to turn that layer back on, the outline layer back on. So if you turn it off, turn it back on so that we can add in the details here for the cats. And I'm going to add the ears here for this cat in the middle. So they have black ears. I'm going to grab that dark blackish, grayish brown color. I'm going to add the ears there. And then I'm going to grab that pink that we used for the nose and just add a little bit of pink towards the inside. This is going to get covered a little bit by the hat that they're wearing. So don't worry again about the edge there. You'll see the outline where the hat is going to be kind of overlapping it. So don't worry too much about that. Now I'm going to add that pink to the inner ears of the two cats on the right and left as well. And I use the circle blend brush for that because again, that will kind of pull a little bit of the gray in so I don't have to go around and add kind of those ear hairs to make it look like it's inset within the ear. It just kind of does that with the blend brush already for me. Now let's go ahead and grab that white color and let's go over the fur here for the cats. We're going to lighten up a lot of the areas and I'm actually going to lighten up closer towards the cat in the middle because I want there to be a definition between the two cats in front and that cat in the back. And so what I'll do is I'll add in a lot of this white coloring to their hair on the two cats on the outside, and then I'm going to darken a little bit for that cat in the middle, Benjamin, the cat in the middle, darken a little bit towards the edge so that it's not looking like they're all one cat, one blob of cat. And so that's what I'm going to do here. So I'm going around adding the white fur to both the cats and then darkening up the edges for Benjamin. And you'll notice that my brush size is fairly large. You'll see that in the top left slider there. I made it large because, as I mentioned earlier, the larger the brush, the faster it is to add in this hair. And I still like the look of it. If you want it to be even more detailed, then you can make that brush size smaller, but it's much faster when you have that brush size a little bit larger. The other thing you'll notice in the bottom left picture, I did not include, I originally was going to include like a necklace or something on these two cats on the outside, and I ended up not including that because I wanted two things. One, I wanted this video to be under an hour, and I was kind of pushing it pretty close to an hour. This video, I think, is about 55 minutes, so not much shorter than an hour. But then also, I just wanted the focus point to be on the um, headdress that they have, and so that's why I didn't do the necklace as well. I wanted to, again, make this under an hour, but then I wanted that focus, your eye, to go to their heads and not necessarily where their necks are. The reason I did add kind of this bow tie to Benjamin is because there's not a lot of elaborateness on his head, and so I wanted to just include one more touch to his costume. Now let's go ahead and work on the cat to the left here. I'm grabbing that dark red orange color and I'm going to add in with that circle blend brush the distinction markings here for this cat. So it's a little bit above the head here and then a little bit along the sides. And again, this is not going to be truly accurate to her cats, but it's hopefully enough of a representation that you get who they're supposed to be referring to. So I'm just adding in a little bit of that marking here on the face, and then I'm going to blend it a little bit more with either the white or the gray color here, just to make it so it's not so stark of a contrast. I want it to look like it's blending in. And now let's jump to the cat on the right, because the cat on the left doesn't have that many markings, but the cat on the right, which is Meredith, I believe, has a lot of markings, especially lower on the body. So we want to add those in. There's a lot of around the edge, a lot of this kind of darker pattern on the back side, but it's kind of coming over on the side. So we're going to grab that dark, almost black color. I'm adding that in on the side here, just a little bit up on the top of the head, not much, but just a little bit. And then on the left side as well, I'm gonna add a little bit there because I think most of the front or the belly is this white color. So I don't want to go in the front there. So I added that dark color first, and then I'm going to grab some of this red orange. I'm just adding in little spots here and there. I don't know exactly what the pattern is called for cats, and if you're a cat owner you probably know the name of that. I'm not a cat owner, I have a dog, but there's a very distinct pattern on this cat, and so I'm just kind of trying to follow that the best I can, adding in these kind of reddish brown colors and this lighter brown color here to make it look like that pattern. And then I'm going to grab an even lighter brown. It's a brown that kind of blended between the light brown that we used and the gray. I'm just going to use that to blend it into the gray a little bit here around the edges. And now for the markings on the head, we're going to do the same technique that we did on the cat on the left, Olivia. I'm going to grab this dark reddish color. I'm just going to add in the markings here. There's a little bit more color variation here than the other cat, and so I'm just going to add in a few other colors, and then we'll blend it out and soften it out so it's not such a stark contrast between these two colors. And I might have mentioned this, but I like to use gray to blend this out because it's not as bright as if I used white. You can definitely use white if you want to, but I still want these colors to be somewhat darker. And I feel like if you use white, it's going to lighten them up too much. So that's why I'm using the gray here just to soften it. It still looks pretty natural blended into the hair on the face. It's not darkening the face by any means, that we already have the, lightness there, but it's helping kind of blend these darker colors in. Whereas if we used white, I think it would kind of wash it out a little bit more. And then I'm just going to add a little bit more of this reddish brown color in. And now with the hair done, let's go ahead and work on the nose and mouth. So I'm going to grab that dark red color. I'm just going to add in a little bit of where that nostril is and then add some shading to this as well, just to give it a little bit more definition. Now what I'm going to do is add hair over the nose here to blend it in a little bit more so it's not just standing out too much. So I'm going to grab just the colors around their nose. I'm going to make sure this layer set or alpha lock is turned off for this. I'm using it directly on that nose layer that we just worked on, and I'm grabbing the hair color around the nose and bringing that down a little bit. I'm doing this on the nose layer because we want it to be over the nose, and it helps it blend in a little bit more nicely when we're blending it in with the exact or the actual object there. And then just grabbing that color around, just hold your finger down on the color you want to select, and Procreate will grab that color for you, and then you can use that for the hair around the nose. Now let's go ahead and create a new layer. We're going to work on the head dresses now. And so I'm going to grab this gray, this light gray color to the bottom right. I'm going to use that to start tracing the jewels here that are on the headdress. And then we're going to add some detail to it. So we're going to build up the headdresses to make them look glitzy and glam and sparkly. Now, one thing that I will do, and I didn't necessarily do that right here, so you can ignore the step that I do of duplicating this, but I'm going to completely finish one of the headdresses and then copy it and put it on the head of the other cat. That's going to make it so much easier. If you want to do them each individually, that's absolutely fine. It'll make it a little bit more unique, and give it a little bit more character so they're not looking exactly the same. But I'm doing that again, wanting to keep this video under an hour, so I'm going to just do one fully up, copy that, and then move it over to the other cat. So now that we have the main color down for these jewels, we're going to set that layer to alpha lock, and we're going to grab this lighter cyan blue color, and we're going to grab that circle blend brush and start adding in this lighter shade towards the center. Now I'm not going to the edge of it. I want some of that gray still to peek through, but I'm just adding it a little bit to the center here, and then I'm going to grab a lighter cyan blue color and just add that as well to the center. So you could start with any of the colors. I actually switched it over and started to do most of these with that lightest color first, and then started building up and pulling in those darker colors, but just kind of building up a little bit again, leaving some of the edge in that gray color. And now that we have most of that lighter color filled in, I'm going to grab that original medium cyan blue color and just go toward the bottom of it. Again, we still want some of these colors that we're building up to peek through. So I'm kind of going around the edge, and on the bottom, I'm not doing the top part or in the middle as much because again, I want some of those lighter colors to show through. So I'm just adding in some definition here, some character here. This one in the middle is a little bit bigger of a gem, so I just kind of traced an outline of it there, but we'll keep building this up. Now we're grabbing the dark cyan blue color and filling in more towards the center here just a little bit. Again, we still want those other colors to poke through and to shine through because these are gems, they're jewels, they're sparkly, there's a lot of definition to them, there's a lot of colors in them, and so we're just trying to mimic that in this drawing. Now I'm going to grab that light grayish blue-green color and go even lighter with it. And then I'm going to take that brush, again, we're still using that blend brush, and I'm just going to add some kind of dots to the surface. It's going to give it a little bit of that sparkle that we're looking for. And then we'll go over it with some white as well to really get it to shine. And now I'm going to grab a white color and I'm going to go over that same area we just added, but not as heavy-handed with that. I want a little bit of the white to poke through. I still want some of that lighter cyan color to poke through. And so I'm just adding a little bit of white here and there to give it that shiny look. And now that we have those done, I'm just going to erase the one on the left here because again, I'm going to copy and duplicate the one on the right when it's fully complete with the feathers and everything. So we don't need that gray on the left. Now that we have that complete, let's go ahead and do a new layer underneath the gems, and we're going to work on the feathers. Now for the feathers, I'm using that medium tone cyan color, and I know it's what we use for the gems. Don't worry, they are still going to stand out because we left a lot of the lighter color and the grayish color on the edge. It's not going to blend in with the feathers, but I'm just going to go trace the feathers here with that medium cyan color, fill it in, and then we're just going to grab that dark cyan color that we have right next to it and just add a little bit of shadows to the feathers here. We're not going to add too many details on the feathers themselves. We will add some more sparkles to them, but the feathers, we're going to make it pretty easy, just a little bit of shading, and it's going to look great. And I hope you all are enjoying the can. You'll probably be really sick of this song by the end of this video. I just wanted to do a fun nod to Showgirl era, and I always think of like Moulin Rouge and the can, and so that's why I have the song playing in the background while we're doing this video, but hopefully you all don't get too tired of it by the end of this. And now let's go ahead and set that layer to alpha lock, and we're going to add in the details. So remember, I'm only doing two colors for this. So we're doing this medium cyan color and now this dark cyan color. I'm going to go through and add where there should be shadows. I'm using that circle blend brush. But I'm going to be adding where there will be shadows. I'm adding a line down the middle of the feathers, and then I'm going to be adding lines going off of that middle section to give that feather appearance. So I'm doing all of that with this dark cyan blue color. You could do that easily to give this definition with just these two colors. And so with this being the pressure sensitive brush, you can go a little bit heavier handed with the darker color in areas where it's going to be darker. So behind the gems, underneath other feathers, and then go lighter when you're doing the markings as I'm doing here, but a little bit lighter to give the illusion that it's a feather. And now with most of those details added in, I'm just going to turn that outline layer off so I can fine tune certain areas, blend things out. So there's a line there going through my feather I didn't like. So I'm just kind of blending things out and fine tuning them before we add a few more crystals to the feathers here. Now let's go ahead and add crystals to the feathers as well. We're going to do this on the crystal layer that we did earlier, and we're just going to start with that light color that we used before, that gray color, and just add the dots along those lines. And we're going to do similar technique, not too complex here because they're not very large shapes. And so we're just going to be doing the gray, and then we'll go in with some of those lighter cyan colors and then a little bit darker, and then follow it with some white to give it that extra pop. And again, we're just going through those colors, working from the lightest to the darkest, and then we will hit it with a little bit of light color again with the white at the end to give it a little bit more glitz and glam. And because it's a pressure sensitive brush, you are going to get a lot of dimension with this because you will be doing different pressures when you're adding in these colors. So it's going to look a little bit more realistic. Not every rhinestone or gem is going to twinkle as bright as the one next to it because it just depends on the angle that they're placed. And so this will help give it more of a realistic look by using that circle blend brush. And now I'm getting pretty happy with how this is looking. So I'm going to zoom out just for one final look to see if it's looking how I want it to look. And then what I'm going to do before I duplicate, I'm going to actually merge the crystal layer down and then swipe left on the newly merged layer and duplicate. Then you can also flip it to kind of mirror each other. And that's exactly what I did here. And then I can merge both of those layers down. I am replacing the one on the right a little bit. It's a little too high for me, but you can merge those two layers together, and then we have our feather headdresses done. So now that those are done, let's go ahead and work on the hat for the cat in the middle. So I'm going to just trace the shape of the cat. Now we did modify where the feathers are on that headdress on the left because we just duplicated the one on the right. So you have to fix that a little bit here, which is not a big deal. So you're just going to trace it, fill this in with the orange. I'm going to do this on 2 layers. So the brim of this hat I'm going to put on 1 layer, and then the top part of the hat I'm going to put on a separate layer below the ears layer of this cat here. I'm also putting the bow on that brim layer as well. And then once you have the 2 layer shapes filled in, you can set them to alpha log because we will adding a little bit of detail to both of them. The top part of the hat, we will add a layer above it and work on the crystals for that hat. But for the yellow part of this, you can set to alpha log, and then we'll add some orange in, some darker orange in to give it more shadows in the areas to make it more defined. So now back on that top hat part, just on that yellow layer, I'm going to grab that dark red color, that circle blend brush. I'm just going to add some shadow to the bottom here and just go up a little bit with it. Now I'll add a little shadow where the crystals are going to be, so just behind the crystals, because there could be a little bit of shadow there. And I'm not doing too much. No, I don't want this to go too dark, so I'm just adding very little amount, and I'm not filling in the whole area because again, there's gonna be crystals over top of this, so you don't have to fill in right where that brim is. If you want to, that's fine. That's not gonna do anything. You just won't see it. And now I'm going to take that really light orangish yellow color, and on the brim I'm going to go along the top part because that's where that light's going to be hitting, and then I'll grab that dark red and go up underneath because there will be a little bit of shadow from the cat's head. And then going back to that original orange yellow color that we have, I'm just going to blend those 2 colors that we just added in back into the hat to make it look more natural. And now let's add that dark red to the bow. So the bow is folded over here, so I'm adding dark here, which is where there would be shadows in from that bow. And then in the middle here from this bow, just adding a little bit of shadow. And then we're going to add some shadow in between the 2 bow layers as well and blend all of this back out with that original orange color. I will add a little bit of highlights as well just to make it look like the bow is kind of peeking out in some areas because the bow is, it's a fabric, right? So it's not going to be perfectly straight and even. So I'm just adding a little bit of this lighter yellow, and I'll go back over it with the orange color that we used for the base. In a lot of the details, I typically use that circle blend brush or the square blend brush, depending on the shape that I'm working on. I use that with almost every aspect of adding in details. Sometimes I'll use the regular circle brush or the square brush if I just want to add a bunch of color, and then I'll blend it out afterwards. So I'm always using the blend brushes to blend these colors in as I'm working through my drawings. And I'm going to add a little bit of this dark red around the edge of the center part of the bow, but then after that, I'm pretty much done with the bow. Now we can jump over into the hat and work on the gem layer. Now on a new layer, and originally I did put this above the brim layer, but I mentioned earlier we want this above the top hat part because I want it tucked behind that brim. But I'm using this dark cyan blue color to trace and fill in the basic shape here of the crystals that we have above this hat. I do change it a little bit with just the detail of this main big piece right here that I'm working on, but for the most part it's pretty much following the outline here. And now using the similar techniques that we used for the headdresses, we're going to do the same here. The only difference is I went dark to light. So before I did the gray first and then added the lighter colors, I just did this a little bit different just to try a slightly different technique, but it's essentially the same thing. The other thing that I did differently here is the shape of the crystals above the hat here. You'll notice in the outline I had kind of like a circular thing with diamonds around the edge. I wanted to tweak that a little bit. I wanted this to be more gem-like on that big section right above the brim here, and then do the crystals going upward from that. So I did change that a little bit, and I'll show you as we're going through this how I did that. So I'm just, again, went dark to light with the colors. I'm just kind of doing like vertical lines for this section here to make it look like there's individual crystals, kind of like oval-ish shape, kind of oval square-ish shape, or rectangular shape here, and then kind of building it up there with the different colors we have. And then because they're kind of looking a little bit blurred together, I'm just grabbing that dark cyan color to distinguish kind of the different gems here that I have above the hat. And now I'm just trying to lighten it up a little bit because I want these to be glossy and shiny as if they are actual gems or rhinestones or, something sparkly. And now I'm going to go in with the white color, still using that circle blend brush for all of this. And I'm just going to add some shine to these gems. Okay, I'm happy with how that's looking. If you are too, let's go ahead and move on. I'm going to create a new layer, bring it below all of the other layers that we've just created because we're going to work on the background here. I'm grabbing that square brush and I'm just going to do a black kind of rectangular shape here right behind the cats. This is a like a get ready makeup mirror area, and so I'm just adding a little bit of darkness there. I'm adding these lights along the side and then just a little bit of the table down below. There's also some details you could add if you want to do. I just kept it as a plain table because, again, wanting to keep this under an hour. I didn't want to spend too much time on the smaller details, so that's kind of open for you. If you want to adapt and continue forward with this drawing, you can definitely do that. But for now, like I mentioned, I'm just going to do the sides here where the lights are, and then the table, and then we'll add some feathers just in the front here, and then we'll be done. And I'm just using very minimal colors for the backdrop here because, again, I want the cats to stand out. And so I'm just using these three colors, this dark cyan blue, the orange, and that light orange color, just to give it a little bit of distinction so you know, okay, yeah, there is a table here, or there's some sort of interest here as well. And then I'm going to use that dark cyan blue color and the square blend brush. I'm just going to add a little bit of shadow underneath of the cat so it looks like they are actually sitting up on this table here. Now on a new layer above all of the other layers that we've created, we're going to grab that cyan color and we're just going to fill in similar to how we did the feathers on the headdress. We're going to fill in the shape of the feathers here and then go through with that darker cyan color to add the definition, add shadows, add different areas of interest. I'm not adding rhinestones to these. They're just going to be plain feathers, but if you wanted to add rhinestones, you definitely can. And then I was going to duplicate this layer, but then I realized I should probably just wait until I add the shadow. So feel free to ignore this step right here. But I'm going to go in with that dark cyan color again, set this layer to alpha lock, and then add in the details again using the same techniques that we used for the feathers on the headdress. And now that we have this done, I actually want to have two on each side. So I'm going to duplicate this layer and experimented with flipping it, but I kind of just wanted them to be the same direction. So you'll see me kind of tinkering around with it. I just end up keeping on the same direction. Instead of flipping it, you can flip it if you want to. Just know that you'll have to kind of fix the edge because it's cut off from our image. Which is also partly why I just decided to keep it the same direction. But now that we have those, I'm going to merge those two layers down, duplicate that new merged layer, flip it this time, and then move it over to the right side. Now one of the final things is adding those bulbs. So add a new layer above that background layer we just created. Grab this light orange color and we're going to actually go a little bit lighter, so almost to white. That circle brush, and we're just going to add in the light bulbs here, and then we'll add a little bit of glow around them, and then we will be done. Now let's go ahead and duplicate that layer, and then on that bottom layer that we have here, we're going to add a little bit of a blend mode, and then we're going to do a Gaussian blur on it. So blend mode, you can pick whichever one you want. I like screen, I like add, sometimes I use light, and it just depends on what I end up wanting to use for this particular image. And sometimes after you do the Gaussian blur, it's nice to go through those blend modes again. So that's what I'm kind of doing here, is just going through the different blend modes to pick which one I might want, and if I need to do more of a Gaussian blur or not. And with that, we are done with our drawing. Thank you so much for sketching this glamorous life of a showgirl or life of a showcat. scene with me. If you had fun, hit like and subscribe. It really helps my channel out. And if you are a Swiftie or just a fan of her music, let me know in the comments below what song is your favorite on the new album. See you in the next video.